Recollection of Forms of Spirit in James Joyce's Finnegans Wake. So, we are still on force and the understanding as the form of spirit. This is from Hegel's Phenomenology, of course. A dialectic of consciousness and then self-consciousness. From one form of spirit or form of consciousness to another. Although I'm not going through all the forms of consciousness in this analysis, just a few. So force and understanding. The wake presents us with flitting phenomena that are mere manifestations of persisting underlying energies or forces. The understanding itself can be understood in terms of the solicitation of such forces, in that there is appearance and there is unchangeable ground of appearance, and both are forces that solicit each other, and furthermore, in virtue of such determination, each is soliciting only to the extent that it is solicited to be soliciting. This is from the Phenomenology of Spirit. I should have put a page number actually. And the first is solicited only to the extent that it itself solicits the other to solicit it. That is the first force. Neither side has any immediacy as against the other. All that is real is the unity of the two, and this delivers unto us the infinity of force. For force is no longer limited either by a thing upon which it acts, nor by another force outside of it. Force and its manifestation have nothing independent of one another, even in form. The force is completely self-determined. It is infinite, like the endless continuum of the letter, this letter that they're analysing in the wake. Like the infinite loop of the wake, and from here a transition can be undergone to the forms of the inner and the outer, the internal and the external. I think that's all clear enough. So, a force in this context is that by which things hang together, the substratum behind appearance and the appearance itself. And this is from the Phenomenology. In the case of the motion of falling, force is the simple factor, gravity, whose law is that the magnitudes of the different moments of the motion, the time elapsed and the space traversed, are related to one another as root and square. Hegel exposes the equivocation with regard to inner and internal, inter alia, to defend Newtonian causal realism concerning gravitational forces, and the scientific legitimacy in general of force acting at a distance, which is referred to in the wake here in its usual idiosyncratic manner, of a palm full grave and a family of levity. Palm being an apple, of course, grave being gravity. And here's another quote from the wake. As my explanation here are probably above your understandings, latal bratons, though as augmentatively, uncomparisoned in Cadwan, Cadwallon and Cadwallona, I shall revert to a more expletive method which I frequently use when I have to... My site is going. Sermo, yes, sermo. Can't remember what that word means actually. Sermo with middle class pupils. The examiner of the letter anticipate, among other things, both genetic criticism, which I mentioned that earlier in a previous post. The Wake is anticipating and mocking such approaches to its analysis. This is why chapter 5, which I'm referring to here, is a very important chapter in the Wake to study. Here's from the Science of Logic. The relation of each to the other is not the passivity of a process of determination, so that thereby something other came into it, but the impulse only solicits them. There has, of course, been much equivocation in the terms inner and or eternal in both ontology and epistemology, which Hegel alerts us to. I've got the relevant paragraphs there, 132 to 165, from this is relevant from Aristotle to Kant. You'll find this in more recent times with Peirce. I will mention Peirce again later, actually. A genuine relic of ancient Irish pleasant pottery. Well, actually, I think that comes... I'm getting ahead of myself. In one sense, they are employed to characterize... I'm talking about the inner and the internal. They are employed to categorize features of any one individual, whereby such features, if only in part, are constitutive of that individual. In another sense of the terms, the features thus characterized are incorporated solely within that individual, which is to say they are non-relational. What is of interest here is, of course, the relational and not the coincidental. Otherwise, the idea persists that no relational feature of an individual can be constitutive of that individual. And this idea further entails that no causal relations can be constitutive of that individual. Manifest forces are triggered by forces of solicitation, themselves triggered by yet further forces of solicitation ad infinitum. A scrutiny of the letter solicits several associations, such as a sizable tea stain, which I mentioned last time, was at first glance taken to indicate an authentic relic of ancient Irish poetry of the Lydia languishing class. This is where it comes in now. A genuine relic of ancient Irish pleasant pottery, or poetry, of the Lydia-like languishing class, known as a Homeor the Hazy. Lydia-like, ladylike, and Lydian, the designation of one of the modes of ancient Greek music, characterized as soft and effeminate. Right. Lydia languishing class, suggesting softness and a feminine hand, but the letter's contingent physical form, as well as its compositional content, are considered as though they are inseparable, for in addition to the original material that was used in the document's production, it has been sold by accretions of tertiary matter whilst loitering in the past. That's from the Wake. terror the earth and the blind Theban soothsayer Tiresias, who was both man and woman, are evoked. Are we supposed to think of Lucian of Samosata? This is my speculation here, because Joyce doesn't actually mention Lucian, who told the tale of Menippus and his descent into Hades to find out the right way to live. Utterly perplexed by the philosophers who neither agree in their doctrines nor practice what they preach, he goes below to consult Tiresias, who tells him to disregard them. The life of the common sort is the best, and you will act more wisely if you stop speculating about heavenly bodies and discussing final causes and first causes. Spit your scorn at those clever syllogisms and, counting all that sort of thing nonsense, make it always your sole object to put the present to good use and to hasten on your way, laughing a great deal and taking nothing seriously. Seems like good advice to me. Well, not really, but I mean, about to taking nothing seriously anyway. So I wouldn't bother taking these posts of mine too seriously. Just hope you find them interesting and entertaining. Right. The identities of the writer or of the writers had to be settled for both before and after the Battle of the Boyne, victory for the forces of King William III of England over the former King James II, fought on the banks of the Boyne in Ireland in 1690, which is often thought of as Ireland's Waterloo. It was the custom not always to sign letters. The tea-time stained terminal, say not to tag, mumma, or our show's a failure, is a cosy little brown study all to oneself, and whether it be thumbprint, made mark, or just a poor trait of the artless, its importance in establishing the identities in the writer complexes, for if the hand was one, the minds of active and agitated were more than so, will be best appreciated by never forgetting that both before and after the Battle of the Boyne, it was a habit not to sign letters always. Made mark, a trademark, or a portrait of the artist. That's from the Wake. No, I don't actually know if that is historically accurate. I assume it is, but I haven't checked. Nor would I know how to, really. Several of Paul's epistles close with. This is referred to in the Wake, actually, but I didn't put the quotation up. So anyway, I think I'm getting ahead of myself again. Several of Paul's epistles close with this: salute one another with a holy kiss. At some Romans and Corinthians, a kiss that serves as a sign of the purest love. The association, of course, being that you will need to understand some of the story, well, as far as there is a story of the Wake, to know what I'm talking about here. The association here is that Paul is very much on the defensive, not just with regard to his principles, but also to his character, just like HCE is. It was the custom not always to sign letters. So why, pray, sign anything as long as every word, letter, pen stroke, paper space, is a perfect signature of its own. That's from the Wake. As the tea plant adds to water a delicious stain, so does the goddess of life add the stain of nature to the abstract purity of the waters of heaven. The cup of tea is indeed the brew of life. Apparently penned by Anna Livia and her anti-collaborators, it may well be her first draft. Salute one another with a holy kiss, it says. Yes, that's it. The PS at the end suggests something of an afterthought, however. So many questions surround its inscription, its possible author, or its authors, even its envelope, because they actually analyse the envelope as part while scrutinising the letter, and the role of the hen, and whether an outline or version of what it says can be produced, and whether an explanation can be provided for why it is legible only in part. From a Hegelian perspective, it is the phenomenological level that is central. The Wake narrative is here recounting the experience of the loss of certainty. What is to be done with that loss? Thereby hangs a tale, one whereby stability and unchangeability in what is present or presented is ascertained as being out of the question. A form of spirit is wanting to express one thing, and as it turns out is expressing precisely the reverse. The experience is crucial. The experience of meaning to say something determinate and merely being able to say something universal. That which means to be the most concrete and specific, the most determinate and richest experience, turns out to be the most devoid of any substance. Proceeding to the level of I mean, where there is meaning and something being mine, I cannot say what I mean. This makes more sense in German. In German, meaning and mine are connected. Meinen is the verb to mean. Mine and meine, male and female, mine as possessive pronouns. I cannot say what I mean, for what I mean or intend is an attempt to fix the object and a loss of self, and if I cannot say what I mean, then there is no mine of this experience. And if there is no mine to this experience, then there is no me to have it. The very act of intending engenders a loss of concreteness and certainty, and a loss of self in the process. The who am I and who is the I that speaks of the Wake is the expression of a particular form of spirit, and this will point all the way forward to desire. Begierde. It's a very important concept. I give the paragraph there where he starts to speak of desire. It's perception. No, that's later, isn't it? I'm getting ahead of myself again. Forward to desire, wanting everything to have nothing other than a history of discovering its emptiness. Reason is active. It goes about conducting experiments, like experience, like the Wake narrative, that is not aporetic rather, aporia, but continuously and intoxicatingly dialectical. An infinite dialectical play made intelligible through recollection, as from out of associations and connections, representations, picture thoughts are constituted a mode of concrete knowledge of a self-consciousness embodied and located in the world, that the mode of understanding is unaware of its own dynamism. Its perception and experience of various aspects of the thing was something that only happened to consciousness. The objective is finding the truth in the form of a notion, not of a thing through reason. And there's that well-known quote from the Science of Logic, which you'll also find in the Elements in the Philosophy of Right. What is rational is actual, and what is actual is rational. Which is not to say that everything is as it ought to be, of course, but rather that the dynamic and the progressive aspect of reason is at work, actualizing itself in the world. The objective is finding the truth in the form of a notion, not of a thing. Finding it through reason. Thus far, there has been an appropriation of its own assured possessions, laying claim to everything high and low that belongs to it. Reason will assume its own proper form by apprehending its essence in things. It can discover itself in the world of things by grasping their essence understood as universals, or the dynamics between things, or laws. This is some very beautiful aspects of the Wake coming up, which is why I think it is well worth reading. Cling to it as with drowning hands, hoping against hope all the while, that by the light of philosophy, and may see never false ages, things will begin to clear up a bit one way or another within the next quarrel of an hour. Philosophia, the love of light, and philophol, a fine madness, with philosophy to guide us. We can follow issues of process, including historical sequences, with a phenomenological critique of forms of spirit in the wake. Cogent structures emerge that demonstrates that non-social, non-historical, or non-conceptual accounts of our knowing, of our agency, of the particulars we know and act upon in our surroundings, all demonstrably fail to account for our specific forms of spirit through history and ultimately across the entire world. To be continued. It may stop, but it never ends.